Welcome back to the course. Now in this section I want to talk a little bit about one of the S3 functions. S3, probably along with EC2, is one of Amazon's most popular services. It's the simple storage service, thus the S3. What S3 does is it allows bucket storage of whatever kind of objects or files. If you want to store stuff externally, your own files, photos, videos, whatever, you can stick it up to S3 like Dropbox. Or what we're going to do if we're generating data objects internally within AWS IoT, we can send them to S3. And there's lots of different ways to do this, and we're going to go over several. The reason I'm going to show you this method of storage in S3 first is because it's the simplest, but unfortunately, it's not very effective for what we want to do or for most applications. But nevertheless, AWS IoT, they have a function designed for it, so I want to step through that function just as an introduction to S3, and then we can talk about the problems that it presents, and then we'll start talking about workarounds for a better, more thorough storage solution, the right way to do things as far as IoT goes. So let's go ahead and create a new function, and we'll call our function straight to S3, because we're going to be sending data objects straight to S3, so I thought that was a clever name. And I'll just say sending data to S3 directly from the test console. And we'll ignore my terrible typing. So we're going to have the same attributes and topic filters we've done in the last few lectures. So whatever your publishing topic filter is from your embedded device, just copy and paste it right here. And we're going to add action. We're not going to have any conditions for this one. And so we'll go right here to store messages to an S3 bucket, select that. We're going to configure the action. Now we're going to create a new resource, which is basically creating a new S3 bucket and then provisioning it correctly so we can throw our data objects into the S3 bucket. So go ahead and create a new resource. I'm going to create a bucket, and we got to give it a unique name. So we'll call it test bucket 115. And I'll leave everything the same. And we can turn on these things or not. You can look through this stuff, but to keep it simple, I don't need any of this. And none of this is really going to affect what we're doing. So I'm not going to talk about that. But I do want to grant it public access. Just like all this stuff, I'd rather start with over-inclusive access and then scale things back as we go. So for this, I want to make everything as public as possible. I'm not really overly concerned with people intercepting or stealing or corrupting my sensor data. All right, so if we can go ahead and create the bucket, and now it's already there, we just got to find it. There it is, test bucket 115. So we're good to go with that. We have our test bucket. We can go back over here, refresh this as our test bucket will appear, and there it is at the very bottom. So we're good to go with that. Now this key doesn't really affect too much of what we're going to do. So for this one, I'll just say time, but it's just actually going to end up naming the generic file time. It's not going to do anything very effective. We're going to create a new role. So we'll just call our role test bucket role. And you can call yours whatever you want. But remember, with these roles, Amazon's going to provision it as it deems fit for this kind of a function. So if we wanted to have special access or extended super access or restricted access, all we would need to do is go into the IAM section, go into our policies and roles, and we can alter the role from there and give it more permissions or less permissions. So let's go ahead and create the new role. Then we're going to select our role, which is test bucket role here, update the role. So we successfully updated it. Now we can add the action. And we're done with this, so we can create the rule. And then when we refresh this, we're going to see that straight to S3 is enabled. All right, there it is right there. It's enabled. I don't know why it moved it out of order, but it doesn't matter. Let's go back to the test panel. Subscribe to whatever topic from your embedded device that you named it. Subscribe to this topic. Now, again, with my ESP devices, I'm just going to hit the flash button. And let's go for 3 or 4 of these different readings. Doesn't matter how many you do, really. And now let's go see what our S3 test bucket looks like. So let's go back over here, refresh this. And here's our test bucket. So let's see all the files and everything that are in here. Well, we just have one file. So let's examine if it's going to be suitable for anything what we want to do. I'm going to hit this and download it to open it up. And there we go. Oh, wait, I think there's a problem. We only have one reading. What happened to all our other readings? That's unusual. If you look here it's only recording this latest reading that we did. It's not recording all our previous readings. That doesn't make any sense. And in fact, I contacted Amazon about that and say, hey, why does this concatenate and add all the readings? They told me basically that's impossible. It's always going to overwrite and just have one data object in that bucket. So this really is not suitable for a purpose for IoT. And in fact, the support representative I spoke with agreed with me. But this, again, isn't really what we want to do anyways. We don't want a bunch of files of these JSON readings in this kind of format. Number one, we don't have any storage. Number two, we'd have to clean and parse this to get it into any kind of functional storage for graphing and analysis. So this is not going to suit our need, but I did want to show you this. So we're going to move on to the next lecture where I can show you another kind of workaround technique. But then we will get into the more effective IoT techniques that we really want to use going forward to effectively utilize device-to-cloud communications. So let's move on to the next lecture. Okay, we've seen from the previous section that S3 really didn't satisfy our needs as far as being able to hold multiple objects in storage from those MQTT messages and those JSON packets. So I just wanted to briefly discuss another kind of workaround, but it's not going to be a final solution for anything. This I would consider just more of a quick and dirty solution if you want to grab some JSON files, but you're not really particular on them being historically accurate and being able to do analysis with them without cleaning them up extensively. But you can go up here to export. Again, there's a few things here: pause, clear, and export. Clear will take all these listings and reset it, which is a nice function. But export allows you two file formats you can download directly from: JSON and CSV. So I'll show you what those both look like. All right, here's what the CSV one looks like. That's a comma-separated value. And it can be pretty useful, possibly depending on what you want to do. Let me recenter this for you. But probably not completely, because it's going to add in a lot of superfluous information fields that aren't going to be very helpful. But if you got a quick and dirty where we're not putting them to storage, at least we're getting more than one data object in S3. So it's at least concatenating the data. We're not just getting a single data object. So that's what the CSV looks like. Now let's look what the JSON looks like. So I opened this up with Microsoft Code. This one's probably even less useful because it contained a lot of ancillary information by our QoS service level. Our payload is actually saying, hey, here's your payload. Obviously, we never put payload in our package, so it specified it as that, knowing that this was our payload. Well, it added all the brackets and everything that's part of the JSON format. So that may or may not be helpful, but again, the biggest drawback of this functionality here, it's only going to capture what's presently showing on our IoT test monitor. So not entirely helpful. Let's go on to the next section where I'm going to talk about Kinesis Firehose, and you're going to see, at least for a time or size interval, that it's a little bit more useful than what we've just done going directly to S3. Okay, this is a very short video on how to make an S3 public bucket in 2022, because things have changed a little bit, but it's still fairly easy to do with just one extra step. So the first thing we need to do is create a bucket. I'm doing this for my home region. Name your bucket whatever you want. I'm going to call mine sample bucket. I'm just going to add a number here that's going to be globally unique. Now here's what's changed. First part is you have to enable ACLs, that's access control lists. And the reason you need to enable them is because we're going to disable them in a second in an itemized way. But what they want you to do is enable permissions through IAM policies now, not through ACLs. And then, as always, on block all public access, and now you have to acknowledge that. And that's it for this screen. Go ahead and create the bucket, and then after this is created, we're going to go into the permission screen. Okay, the fastest way to find my new bucket is go over here to creation date so I get my newest created bucket. And it's right here. Now I'm going to go to the permission screen, as I said, and we're going to make a few changes here. This is all okay, but I got to add a bucket policy. So go ahead and hit edit. And I'm going to give you this bucket policy, but just so you can find it yourself, it's the same thing as the one right here. If you go to policies examples, scroll down here to the second one, grant read-only permission to anonymous user. Click that. Copy that, go back to your bucket, and all I'm going to do is just paste it right in, Control V. And then the only thing you need to change here is you need to grab the name of your bucket and copy and paste that. So I'm going to copy that, and you'll need to paste it right here where it says doc example bucket. That's the fake template name holder. There we go. And if I've done everything correctly, I can save those changes. Excellent. Now you got to scroll down further now that that's in there, and you put in your own bucket name right there, /* for all objects within that bucket. And now you have to go back to the ACL, the access control list, hit edit, and go ahead and check these two boxes. So you're going to give everyone access to read. They still can't write to your bucket, but now they can read into your bucket. And that's going to be necessary. Of course, you can do this all with CloudFront and Route 53 and pay extra money for it. But if no one knows your bucket name, this is just a better way to keep it as a free pennies a month open bucket. Save those changes. And we have to do one last thing is we have to set our course policy. Because if you don't set your course policy, you're going to get a mixed access origin headers alert because you don't have the correct headers that are accessible cross domain. So go ahead and use mine, and I'll give you a link to this as well, or put it in the description. And this is fine. It used to be in XML, now it's in JSON, so there was a lot of legacy issues, but this is now the JSON policy that'll authorize those cross-origin headers. Go ahead and save that. And now you have a completely open bucket that you can save, and you have a static IP where you can access this bucket worldwide.